Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well. My name is John, and in this video we're going to be going over some more tasks within Gaio, specifically the parameters to table, table to parameters, and pivot table tasks. Now, if you've been following the videos a little bit so far, you may have seen this sample dashboard flow, the sales dashboard already, where we talked about the report tasks, but here we are to talk about kind of the rest of what's going on here. And while our focus will be on those specific tasks, I am kind of going to go into a little bit more detail about what's going on here as well. So to start off with, in Gaio, every user account for an environment or a specific application is given a unique user ID, and as well as, you know, when you create the account, you'll make a name and things like that. And that's really important. That allows us to do stuff like what we're doing here, which is what I'm going to get into. But also by default, there is a parameter called user ID. Now you can see that the account I'm using right now is user 11, just for the specific. And so what's going on here is we're taking all of our users and we are filtering by the user ID parameter, which will always change. Like, so basically the user ID parameter is set to the current user ID in the dashboard. Because this is a temporary table, obviously if two people are accessing at the same time, this will have different values. So let me close out of that. And if I open this table here, you can see that it's user 11, which is the user ID of the account I'm on. I'm on the Gaio documentation account. And just some more information. This is not all, this position I don't think is default, but the admission date I'm pretty sure is. Anyway, so now getting into the actual task at hand, the parameters to table task. What this allows us to do is take this user ID parameter and output it to a table. Now, generally speaking, when you do a parameter to table, it will output and end up in a one column, one row table. But if you want to output multiple parameters at the same time, you'll have multiple columns, but still one row. And another thing to note is that this arrow here is dotted. Basically, what that means is with a builder, this builder is going to be directly creating this table, and same here. This table is directly used in creating the builder. So the dotted line is just a kind of user created thing. So say you definitely want this task to come after this task here, then you can manually click this dot and drag an arrow. And so now the tasks will execute in this order. But this dotted line, just denotes that, this table doesn't directly create this task, but they will be run in this order. So once we have our ID filtered table, we basically filter the sales table based on an inner join where the user ID in the sales table is equal to the user ID in our newly created ID filter table. So basically what this will do is it takes our 12,000 rows and turn it into just 535 that are all sales related to my user ID. Maybe I made those sales, or they're all clients of mine, things like that. It's just the information that me as user 11 wants to see. So all of the information related to me, and I don't get to see everybody else's sales or too much data, things like that. So yeah, that's basically the parameters to table task. There's a couple other uses for it, but generally speaking, you use it a lot for things like this, where you want to create some kind of filter or a join, and you need to pass through the data using a table or something like that. But a lot of the specifics, will come. It's more of like think of it as like a creative tool. If you have data over here and you're like, okay, well, I need the data to talk to over here, sometimes the parameter to table is a really good task to use for that. And again, even just this filtering of the users and things like that. There's other ways to do it, but this is just our example here. So moving on to the table to parameters task, now it's going the other way. So it takes a table and it sets the value of a parameter based on a value that's in the table. So what's going on here is from our newly created sales dash table, we're taking the aggregate max, order, date, month. So, the highest month from all of the sales that we currently have in the table. And once we have this value, which is, looks like June 2025, we are going to set that value equal to this parameter, param date max. And now these will need to be checked in order for the value to be set. And then just saving the values as default, this just means that until this value is reset, it doesn't change. So maybe if my default parameter value was like March, what would happen is if someone else were to open the dashboard, the value would be set to March unless it gets reset here. Whereas here, because the values are saved as default, it will start as June for everybody. And this task, I think it's relatively straightforward to explain, but a lot of times we use it for things like if you want to do an incremental import, you can select, say, like, I'm importing like my sales, and I want to maybe do an import every day. I can create a parameter based on the max order date or something like that. And so that every time I import, I only import new orders as opposed to the whole table. So that's kind of another use of this table to parameters. Again, you can get creative with stuff like this. It's just, more so a tool in the toolbox, but, I'm just here trying to explain to you some uses. And what's going on here is using this max order date, we're creating some prep to basically take the month for the past 6 months, like the month value, as well as text, so that it shows up as March in plain text as opposed to 03/2025, things like that. So by the time we get to this table here, you can see that month 1 is June 2025, which was equal to our max order date month that we had the parameter set to. Month 2 is a month later, and it goes all the way back 6 months. We have another table to parameters, and what this is going to do is set essentially text values in our quantity sales in 6 months, and I'll explain how that works a little bit later. But we're setting the value for M1, M2, M3, M4, all the way to M6. And here we just take the sales count for those 6 months. So you can see this column nomenclature is just the placeholder value, the M6, the M5, because that's what we're naming the parameters. M1 being the most recent month, and these are the number of orders for each of the months. And here we get into our next new type of task, the pivot table. So let me open that real quick. So basically what's is, you can kind of see it in the icon here. So we take a table where you have maybe multiple rows and less columns, and we rotate it. So now we have one row and multiple columns. So we're pulling the M1, M2, M3, M4, all the way to M6 values, and instead of being displayed this way, they are now going to be displayed this way. So we're going to make new columns with these names, just with the order count values. So you can see the value to pivot is count order ID, and the column values to pivot are here. And we're putting the extra columns at the start, so they start from M1 all the way to M6. So just looking at the difference between the tables, I think will help explain what's going on here. So this is the table before, and this is our table after. So you can see that we have the same values, but now they're just in different columns in one row as opposed to in different rows. And now once we get to this is where our second table to parameters comes back into play, and this is also another cool way to implement parameters and things like that. Is you can see when I go into M1 under the title, it's it's these dual curly braces and M1. So basically what this is doing is it's creating a reference to the M1 parameter, which we know was set to June 2025, so the text for that month. So when we get into July orders, August orders, the text here will change as well. So this is just a way to display maybe some of that information in a better way, as opposed to having to create a calculated field that gets 2 month, or I think that's what it is, 2 month, and you put the text here. It's a little bit quicker, but again, it's open to interpretations. Is all, can be creative with all stuff. This is just an example, but you can see in M2 it's another reference to the parameter, same with all the other ones, and that's just how you can get the titles, because you can do this with graphs. You can have parameter references in calculated fields, all that kind of stuff, but this is just an example here. So I think that's basically it for the parameters to table and the pivot table tasks. Again, our documentation will be linked below, and as always, our support team is always willing to answer any questions you guys might have. So thank you so much.